Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and get started. And Andrea and Kelly, Chris, if you can let people in as they're in the waiting room so we can make sure not to ignore our friends. So this is our agenda for this evening. I'm actually really excited to be with you all because I'm pretty passionate about financial aid and scholarships and helping families make college more affordable. Coming from someone who had student loans and just got loan forgiveness. Avoiding loans is great if you can do it. So that's kind of our goal, to make sure we can make college as affordable and a good financial fit for your family as possible. So you see our agenda on here. We're going to do some brief introductions. My name is Kate Koschel, and I'm a college counselor with DePaul College Prep. And then I will mute myself and let our other colleagues who are presenting say hello really quickly.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea Janik. I am one of the school counselors at DePaul College Prep.
Hi, I'm Kelly Curtin. I am a college counselor at DePaul College Prep, and I just began in August, so I'm a new member of the team with Kate.
Okay, welcome. Good evening, everyone. I am Chris Rohn, and it is my role at DePaul University to manage our incoming freshman transfer financial aid programs.
Excellent. Thanks, team. And then Mr. Monestro or Tony will be hopping in sometime as well, so you might see him. Say hello. You do. All right. Come on, computer. My slide is giving me the flux now. Let's see. Do you want to go forward or not? 1 second. Technology is not my friend all the time. There we go. Okay. Go ahead, Andrea.
All right. So we wanted to start off just by going over some commonly used terms that we'll be covering throughout the presentation. We just wanted to give you a brief definition of these before starting, but we will dive deeper into each of them throughout our time together. Cost of attendance is the sticker price you may see when you are searching what a college or university costs. I will say students rarely end up paying this price. They typically receive different scholarships or grants to kind of bring that sticker price down. The FAFSA and the CSS profile are both financial aid applications that you may hear about from the different universities that your student is applying to. The FAFSA is going to be the application for federal student aid, and the CSS profile is going to be for merit aid. So the CSS profile isn't required by all schools. It tends to be only required by some of our more selective colleges and universities. The FAFSA, however, is accepted at pretty much all of the public and private universities in the United States. Your FSA ID is going to be the username and password that you use to sign your FAFSA. Later on in the presentation, I will talk about how to set up that account. EFC is the expected family contribution, and this is the number that the FAFSA is calculating. After you plug in all of your information, it will give you an EFC, or the amount that your family can be expected to contribute in one academic year. The SAR, or student aid report, is a summary of all of the information that you have listed on your FAFSA. You typically receive this after filling out the form. You can also locate it when you log on to your federal student aid account after submitting your FAFSA. Verification is a process that colleges use to just ensure that everything you included on your FAFSA is accurate. I have a lot of students worry when they see they've been selected for verification, but it's a pretty common process. Some schools decide to select all of their students for verification. So it's nothing to worry about, but it is very important that students get those forms turned in because they won't receive their financial aid until those forms have been submitted. And then special circumstances you'll hear us discuss. These are reasons why a financial aid office may need to look at your finances more closely. You may need to provide some additional information in case the FAFSA doesn't demonstrate the full financial picture for your family. Those were very quick definitions of all of those words, but we just wanted to give you a background before starting. And as I said, we'll dive a little deeper into each of those throughout the presentation.
Please forgive me, I'm not a MacBook user, so if I fuss with technology, because I just got a MacBook from DePaul, and I am a new user to this little system here. So we wanted to kind of overview the college and financial aid timeline because the year is moving fast. It's already October and these deadlines are approaching. And also just to kind of show you how the financial aid and college process work together. So rolling admissions, of course, for colleges, the deadlines are going to vary. Private scholarships, I just want to make families aware that now is private scholarship season. So it's prime time, just like pumpkin spice lattes. It tapers off, however, in April, you're going to see a ton of scholarships in April too. But if you start doing private scholarships or May or June, it's really too late. So you're just going to be doing this limb pickings if you start at that season. So we'll be sending scholarships throughout the year that will be applicable to students, but you can also look at different websites, which Chris will discuss too. Big things to note, FAFSA is open. It is really glitchy right now still. So I helped a student today and the FSA ID site wasn't working for about 30 minutes and then started working again. So as the federal government, does some new enhancements, I can say FAFSA is a lot easier than it has been in previous years, even this year without all the changes. It seems to be a lot quicker. Just note it might be a little glitchy until mid-October. So don't feel too rushed as far as applying. You can go ahead and get your ID started though. We do want to note that in about 2 weeks, there's select Southern schools like Clemson, University of Georgia, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill that have surprised us with some October 15th early action deadlines. So if your students are applying to those schools, the rush is on now. And you can also start FAFSA right after you submit that Clemson application and get a little comfortable in there. We also have our November 1st and November 5th early action deadlines 15th, early action and early decision deadlines coming up within the next month. December 1st is also an early action deadline for some schools and also a regular decision deadline for some schools that have really early deadlines. We would suggest you get your FAFSA done by December 1st because then you'll be making priority scholarship deadlines. Sometimes there's early FAFSA scholarships you can win, and then you can get an earlier award letter and see how those finances are going to pan out. January, February, there's some more regular decision deadlines, and a lot of colleges have institutional scholarship deadlines for departmental things. So if there's a music scholarship or even merit scholarships that they may not automatically offer. So again, the early bird is going to get the scholarship money worms. So we highly suggest that you get that process out of the way. January, we can also send off new transcripts. So if your student has a higher GPA, that'll be to their benefit to be able to look at more scholarship money. And then in March, April, that's heavy financial aid award season, and we can help you compare those letters to see how your packages are panning out. And you also want to keep a check on your child because a lot of times they'll get information through their college portals and through their email about things they need to do to get financial aid, or to be in honors programs, or to get scholarships. So if they're not organized, or if they're, subscribed to Forever 21 emails and Buffalo Wild Wings, and they can't see through all the thousands of emails, this is where a parent can help organize and make sure that they're on top of these important deadlines. And then May 1st is National Decision Day. Also a great time to submit your housing and enrollment deposits because at some colleges, housing runs out and your student won't have anywhere to live. So you want to make sure, again, that they're keeping on top of those deadlines. As you can see, I'm an experienced person and have had that happen with students where they had to change their decision. So the cost of college, it seems very extravagant. Some colleges cost $80,000+ and you're wondering, how am I paying for this? And do I really want to expend that much money? Is it going to be a return on my investment? So what's included in the cost of college when you are looking at costs? Direct costs would be those that go directly to the college. So that's tuition and fees, room and board. And those are things that are going to be directly coming either out of your pocket or financial aid or scholarships. Additional things that you want to consider when making a financial choice for your child include things like transportation. So with going to California or Colorado, how are they going to get back in case of emergencies? Are they going to fly, take a train, plane? Do they need a car? Other things like hair products, hygiene products, school supplies, how are they going to be paying for going out to eat? So these are all things that you want to consider in your indirect costs, and those will be variable by family. So not every family will have the same thing to think about for that. For your college sticker price versus net price. So the sticker price or list price or what you see on those colleges' website that make you want to gasp because you're thinking, wow, this college is going to cost $240,000 over 4 years for my family. And the list price of colleges has actually gone up way past the rise of inflation since the 1990s up to now. So it looks really nutty compared to what I paid for college. However, the interesting thing is behind the scenes, after gift aid, tax benefit, merit scholarships, most families are actually paying a lot, like about 50% of that price. So the net price of what your family actually will pay is much different than what you're going to see on the website, just like buying a car at a car lot. And there's also varied approaches that colleges take to financial aid. So as you see on the slide, there's two that are pretty common. Need blind is where colleges are not considering your child's ability to pay as part of their admissions decision. However, this pans out in 3 different ways. One, you'll see the full need met colleges. So that's a very small amount of schools. They'll meet everything that your family needs with no loans. There's also full need met with loans. So this could be a college that's saying, I'll give you a $20,000 parent plus loan. So you want to be cautious about thinking about what full need met means and make sure you're examining what the financial aid office is actually offering. And then there's also schools that are need blind that don't consider your family's ability to pay in admissions, but they have no guarantee they'll meet any need. So that's why we want to be very discerning in this process. There's only 104 schools that are need blind. So that's a very small percentage of schools in the United States. And of that, only 50% of those about are actually no loan schools. Need aware is when applicants' ability to pay is being considered. It's not heavily weighed. However, they don't want to also enroll a bunch of people who don't have really the ability to pay that unmet need and put them in a position where they will not be successful. So colleges consider families at varied incomes, and need blind does not necessarily equal a better education than a need aware school. So you just want to be considering all these options when you're looking for a financial fit. Next, I also want to bring up a really amazing resource by Jeff Selingo, who is a New York Times bestselling author. He wrote the book Who Gets In and Why, which is a behind the scenes look at selective colleges, so digging in the dirt there. And then also he discusses a theory that shows with research that there's kind of 2 different approaches to college admissions that can help you figure out which might be a financial fit. So our sellers are places like University of Chicago that has a 3% admit rate. They don't have any trouble drawing in students. They have a really high application yield with thousands and thousands of applications. And only about 10% of colleges in the US are in this position where they don't really have to figure out how to round out their class. And they don't really have to work hard to make sure they're meeting the needs of your students. Buyers are most colleges in the United States that have a medium to lower application yield, still amazing quality schools, but their acceptance rate is a little over 30%. So we'll see how that comparison goes. So all of these schools are schools that I'm sure people know, but if you see in comparison, Emory is considered a buyer. They only give about 9% of families without respect to financial need any kind of merit money. Whereas if you're considering Tulane, 53% of students going to that school without considering need are getting some merit money and support. Carnegie Mellon is another example. 7% of families without respect to financial need are getting merit money, whereas Case Western Reserve, 40% are being given merit money. So just keep this in mind, and you can actually access his resource to see which colleges fall in these categories. And terminology-wise, all of these colleges have a good return on investment. A lot of it's more about like naming and branding. So you just want to make sure that whatever college you're looking at is a good fit emotionally, socially, holistically, financially for your student. Other things to think about is your family's income and approach. This will vary because you could make over $75,000 and have 4 children or have medical bills. and still qualify for full Pell and MAP or a percentage of Pell and MAP grants. So those free grants that can help with need-based aid. So your strategy would make sure that you're filling out the FAFSA, and this is for all categories of families, and look for schools that meet a high percentage of need when they're using grant aid, so not giving you a bunch of loans. Families in the middle income range, so you're going to want to use strategies and think about how to lower your EFC legally, so you can talk to a certified financial planner or a certified accountant. But one thing to consider is that student assets are assessed at a higher rate on FAFSA at 20%, and student income is as well. So if you have a student with a huge savings account, you might want to consider how to move that around to ensure that it's not being assessed more highly than the parent assets, which is only 6%. You can compare colleges and merit scholarship offers, so comparing different schools and seeing what they're offering your child. And if your circumstances have drastically changed since 2021, which is the base year for your FAFSA this year, then you would want to work directly with the financial aid office. So if a family member has been laid off or you have a high amount of debt now and you didn't before, your financial aid office is actually your partner. So they will want to help you if things have changed drastically. And then for families above 200,000, we have similar strategies. 200,000, I'm sorry, not 2,000. But the other thing to note is 90% of schools actually want you to do FAFSA. 1, for merit scholarship offers. 2, you can still access work study depending on your family's income. It has no difference. And then also you can access federal loans, which are going to be more reliable with a lower interest rate than a private loan. So everyone do the FAFSA. Some other ways to save and think about when you're really considering your child's best fit. So if your student is falling in the top 20-25% of the admitted class at the college, so let's say the average is a 3.5 GPA, that middle 50, and your kid is falling in the 4.0 range, there's a possibility that they could get additional merit aid because they're falling in that top high admitted class average. So that's something to consider. And you can look at the college's website or even Google to see what the averages are and where your child falls in those percentiles. You can also look at honors programs at colleges, which will provide rigorous opportunities, but also sometimes scholarships. And also they can cut the line on registering for classes, which is a benefit if they can't get to the registration link fast enough. So that's another thing to consider. Some colleges offer visit scholarships. So for just going to the college and going on a visit, you can get $1,000 from some schools. And some colleges also have early FAFSA scholarships just for doing your FAFSA ahead of normal deadlines. Finally, just a note about appeals, which we touched on, and Chris is going to talk about special circumstances a bit more. Again, work with your financial aid office if things have changed, because they would like to know that. Additionally, if your child has a higher GPA at the semester or end of year, or higher test scores, this is another opportunity for them to garner more merit aid because they're presenting even stronger application for colleges. Other things that you might not think about asking. So if you're going on any visits in the next couple of weeks, or even just to talk to the financial aid office or admissions, you can ask, what's the return on investment for this college? So what's the college's retention rate for students, graduation rate? You can even dig into different majors and what their graduation rate is. Also, what kind of career placement or grad school placement rate are you going to get with this college? Because I mean, there are other tangible things that are amazing about college, such as lifelong friendships, diversity, exposure, study abroad. But part of the reason they're there is to get a career at the end and get placed in a job. So these are important things to consider. You also want to know what's the percentage of loans that they give in their packages versus grants. So how much self-help aid are you going to give me when you say we're meeting need, or how much loans do you typically give? What's the average amount of debt a student is coming out with, which that information is readily available on the internet. Thank you, interwebs. Are freshman scholarships renewable? They're not renewable at all colleges when students are being offered these freshman scholarships. You also want to look at what's the criteria for my scholarships to be renewable. So if your student dips below a certain GPA and that lose that scholarship, how will that affect your family? So make sure you're keeping on top of those requirements. And then also, it's also very essential to ask what additional scholarship opportunities exist, because there are a lot at the colleges. Many of them are using Academic Works or different scholarship portals for you to continue to apply for additional opportunities. So after admissions, the process doesn't stop. You still want to keep digging and connecting with the college because they want to offer you lots of things, but you got to check your email. This one is going to be kind of a high level overview, and I'm not going to go in depth about it to be cognizant of time. But as Andrea mentioned, different schools have different methods of looking at financial aid. They will include the FAFSA, but sometimes additionally, they're looking at the CSS. So that's the College Scholarship Service that's through College Board, which costs $25 a school. And it's about, when I looked online, updated today, about 260 schools, like University of Michigan is one of them. So in this method, I just want to point out a couple of things. Sometimes they're going to be looking at your home equity, which FAFSA does not do. They're going to be looking at non-custodial parent assets. So if you have, another parent who's not really involved, does not help, they may still want to see the assets of that person, the income of that person. Business value is assessed at a lower rate for the CSS, so there's one small benefit. And money sent from outside family members may still be assessed as student income. Consensus method is a very small amount of schools in the United States and include places like Duke and Cornell. So CSS and consensus tax at a 5.5% rate, while FAFSA has parent assets at a 5.6% rate. That's not that much different. Consensus also assesses home equity, so something to consider. And under all formulas, like I mentioned before, student assets are taxed, and they're always higher pretty much, except for consensus, than the parent assets. So something to keep in mind. So you can actually find what your school is by looking up lists for like which schools are CSS, which ones are consensus, and kind of cross-referencing it with your school list. I know I just gave you a lot to digest. I'm going to hand it over to Andrea. And of course, we're excited and available to help you with individual questions personally, as opposed to this kind of format. Go ahead.
All right, so I'm just going to be giving some information about the FAFSA. So that's the free application for federal student aid. This is the form that most colleges and universities will be accepting as you're applying for financial aid. So this is just some of the information that you will need in order to fill out the form. We are having a financial aid application workshop on October 20th. So if you want some assistance filling out your financial aid form, this is the different materials that you would need to bring in order to fully complete the form. We can definitely send this over to you as well if you're interested in attending. But the 23-24 FAFSA will be looking at your 2021 federal tax returns. You'll want to bring your W-2s and then any other records of income that you have, any banking statements or records of investments if you have them, any untaxed income, and then a list of colleges that the student would like to attend. Students can add additional schools at any point in their college application process. So if your student isn't completely sure where they would like to apply quite yet, we can always add additional schools at a later date. For the FAFSA, students will also need their social security number or their A number if they have one, and then an FSA ID to sign the form electronically. So as I said, the FSA ID is used to sign your FAFSA, and this can be created at studentaid.gov. Both the parent and one of the parents and the student will need their own FSA ID. So this username and password is tied to your social security number. So it's very important, parents, if you have multiple children who will be attending college, that you write down that username and password because you will be using it later on when your other children go to school as well. I typically, when I was in school, would keep mine with my taxes. That way I had all of the information in one space anytime I needed to renew the FAFSA. That username and password does stay the same as you renew your FAFSA throughout college. All right, so we just wanted to go over some special circumstances. So most students will need to put parental information on the FAFSA until the age of 24. And for FAFSA purposes, we have a chart here that includes who is able to provide that parental information. So this should only be biological parents, adoptive parents, and then step parents if they are married to a biological or adoptive parent. So if your student has a step parent that you're married to, that information is going on the form. As you can see, we also have some people who are not considered parents for purposes of the FAFSA. If your student is in any sort of special circumstance and you would like just an individual conversation, we can definitely guide you through that process as far as who should be putting information on the FAFSA. If the student's parents are unmarried, there's a couple different ways that the form could be filled out. If the parents are unmarried but living together, both parents' information will be reported on the form. However, if they're divorced or separated, you are only going to put the information of the parent who the student has lived with the most for the past 12 months. If it's been 50-50, the student spends the same amount of time with both parents. In that case, you're only going to provide the information for the parent who has provided the most financial support in the past 12 months. We can also provide any additional help if you have individual questions on your specific situation.
I'm so excited how timely we are. We're right on time. I forgot to mention though, and this is important because I saw Mr. Estorina and they're asking about it. Net price calculators. My silly self forgot this. So if you want to play around with your particular situation financially, there are net price calculators that are required by every college where you can put your income in, your students' GPA for the fancier ones, your students' test scores, and it will show you an estimate of how your financial aid will look. So, and that includes a lot of the fancier ones have merit scholarships on there too. So you can see, okay, what kind of merit scholarship should my student qualify for and keep them, in check with that. So net price calculators, how you would access one, for example, for DePaul, you could just Google DePaul net price calculator. It'll pop up. You can pop in your family's individual numbers, and then you'll get a response about what your financial aid may look like. Really quickly, because we're in a really weird situation with your children, and that they're starting FAFSA in 23-24, but some of the rules will change in 24-25. So I just wanted to make families aware of what's coming as far as changes. Some are good, some are not so great. Reduced number of questions. FAFSA used to be pretty long, 108 questions. It's only going to be 36 questions as of next year. I can also say that FAFSA renewals tend to be a lot easier after you've done it the first time because it'll keep some of the same information in there for you when you do it again. You're going to do it every single year that your child is in college. The expected family contribution is going to just be turned terminology-wise into a student aid index. And this is because families, including professionals, were getting confused that the EFC or expected family contribution meant that was actually what the parent was going to pay for college. So if you had a 0, families were thinking, I don't have to pay anything for college. That is not actually the case at many colleges. It's just a gauge or index of how much need the family might have after financial aid and after what they have readily available according to the federal government of what to pay for college. This is the sad one for us with multiple children. I have 2 kids who will eventually most likely go to college. There is currently a multiple child discount on FAFSA. With current proposing rules that the federal government is trying to do with FAFSA, this discount is slated to end. So if you have 2 kids, 3 kids in college at the same time, that benefit will be going away. However, this is a situation that you would want to talk directly to your financial aid office about how you have multiple kids in college and see what can happen as far as supporting your family with that sort of financial burden. Relative contribution. This is the positive one. So if grandma wants to open a 529 for your child, it's no longer going to be assessed. So if grandma starts taking out some of that 529 money, it will no longer be penalized as it is on the FAFSA currently and counted as income. So go grandma. I'm going to talk to my mom and see if she can start my 529 for my children. And then the student income protection is raised. So what this means is currently, if your student is making over $7,000, that would be assessed. That's going to be raised to $9,000 next year for students. So it's kind of raising the ceiling about how much students can make before they're affected by FAFSA. So we'll be keeping an eye on those changes and making sure we can assist you and keep you up to date on that. Now it is we have one more event to promote, and then we're going to have our expert get started. Chris, so you're up next after this slide. I forgot we got to self-promote ourselves.
All right, so just really quick, we are having a financial aid application workshop on October 20th from 6 to 7:30 at our school in person. We'll have our college counselors and representatives from the Illinois Student Assistance Commission available for assistance in helping you fill out your form. They'll also be able to answer any individual questions you may have. If you are planning on attending, please make sure to bring a device. So your students' iPad or a laptop, if you have one, and then you'll want to bring the materials that I went over in a couple slides back. We can definitely send that flyer out to anyone as well, just so you know what you need to bring in order to get it all filled out.
You all done? Okay.
Yeah, Chris, it's all yours. Take it away.
And of course, as soon as I come off mute, some sirens go by. This would be Chicago that we all live in. So good evening again, everyone. And I saw in the chat that there were a good number of folks that just joined us at 6:30. You will have the recording, but I think everything I am going to go over, by the time I'm done, you're not going to feel like you missed anything. And this is the ultimate compliment to the DePaul Prep counseling staff, because I've done this for 29 years exclusively at private schools, and I have never had a high school counseling team present something that exhaustive before I got started. So yes, indeed, you missed 20 minutes of them, but they basically did my job for me. And if there weren't people coming in at 6:30, I could say, I'm done. You guys took care of everything. But in all seriousness, welcome. And for those who weren't here at 6 o'clock, my name is Chris Rohn. I am the Associate Director of Financial Aid for New Student Programs at DePaul University. As I said a moment ago, I've been in admissions and aid for 29 years, exclusively at private schools. Believe it or not, DePaul is considered a moderately expensive private institution. I started in the business at George Washington University in DC, which is a CSS profile school. So I am going to go into great depth unpacking the difference between FAFSA and profile. I have to tell Katie, I've never heard of consensus. And again, I've done this for 29 years. She did mention that Duke and Cornell, I don't think there's any other school in the country that uses that. So maybe if they grow, but if you're not looking at Duke or Cornell, you are looking at FAFSA or CSS profile options. And I'm going to go over all that. So without any further ado, we will just kind of move along, and we start at the most basic level, which is, what is financial aid? And the short answer is, it is everything. Financial aid is the totality of resources that are brought to bear to finance an undergraduate education. It includes free money, which we refer to in the business as gift aid, and it includes self-help, which are student and or parent credit-based loans, and utilizing work-study eligibility, which I'm sure there are many, many people on this call who back in the dark ages of the 20th century had a job on their undergraduate campus in the student center or the cafeteria or what have you. That program still exists. So, and the reason I do this is frequently with first-time parents, we will hear, I applied for financial aid and I didn't get any. And what that means is the student was admitted to a private college, or it could have been a public one, but usually a private one. And for those of you who were here before 6:30, you saw the slides that show at expensive, moderately to slightly more than moderately selective and admissions institutions, at least the top half of the admissions pool receives a scholarship. If not everybody who was admitted receives a scholarship. That's just what we call flat tuition discounting. Or in English, prior to knowing anything about a student's and applicant who's getting admitted's financial circumstances, the schools are automatically offering money based on that student's high school academic profile, quality of high school, quality of coursework, GPA, if you're going test optional. I know somebody asked in the chat, do you not get scholarship money if you don't submit test scores? And the answer was correct. It is, it's a school by school basis, but to provide a little bit more clarity, if a school has an articulated test optional admissions program, they are going to have a merit scholarship awarding hierarchy based on test optional. So the nuance is not, if you're coming from DePaul Prep with a 3.9, and you're applying to DePaul and our evil Catholic competitor Loyola, I'm duty bound to get that line out in at least one, and I would hope it's better received at DePaul Prep than it is when I go to Loyola Academy. If you've got a 3.9, you took AP classes, if it were an IB high school, IB classes, you have a strong curriculum, and you apply test optional, we have a test optional program. Our largest academic merit scholarship is $25,000 a year. Someone who has a 4.4 weighted GPA and didn't send us test scores is going to get somewhere between $23,500 and $25,000. A student who has a 4.3 weighted GPA and sent us their ACTs and they have a 31 is going to get the same thing. So as long as the institution has an articulated test optional admissions program, that comes with merit options, just as traditional admissions where you're submitting transcripts and you're also submitting ACT or SAT scores. So I just wanted to provide a little more clarity on that. Okay, so we talked about gift and self-help. Within free money or gift aid, there are two categories. There's merit aid and there's need-based aid. Okay, there are 4 sources of funding for undergraduate school. There's free money. Oops, I have no idea why that advanced like that. There's free money from the federal government in the form of the federal Pell Grant, which I would hazard to guess that most everybody on this call has heard of. And many of you may have been federal Pell Grant eligible when you were an undergrad. It is the most famous of all aid programs, but only about 1/3 of college students nationally qualify for Pell. The second level would be free money from your state. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about need-based money specifically. So there's a federal Pell Grant. And again, for those who were here at 6, Katie in her slides talked about the Illinois MAP grant. Virtually all states also have a need-based grant program. State grant money logically is only applicable if you go to school in state. It does not matter whether it's a public institution or a private institution, it has to be in state. So this is a very good example to use at DePaul Prep. I'm sure many of the seniors have in their pool, I'm going to apply to DePaul, I'm going to apply to Loyola, I'm going to apply to Marquette, I'm going to apply to St. Louis University, and maybe Xavier and Cincinnati, University of Dayton. These schools are what we refer to as the Midwestern urban Catholic institutions, and many apply to some or all of them. So Marquette needs students from Illinois very badly. And they understand that if a student is eligible for MAP grant, that if that student goes to DePaul or Loyola, they're going to get $7,200 from the state of Illinois. If they go to Marquette, they're not getting any of that. So traditionally, as part of their financial aid awarding philosophy, they provide extra money in addition to what their normal, let's call them computerized algorithmic financial aid packaging to students who are eligible for MAP. If they were to go to DePaul or Loyola or Northwestern or Illinois State or SIU or wherever in state, to make it affordable for them to be able to come to Marquette. The largest share of money unequivocally comes from the schools themselves, most specifically the private institutions. At DePaul, for our freshman class entering in the fall of 21, so 21, 22, we spent $100 million. 60 million in merit scholarships and 40 million in need-based grants. Okay. And then of course, there are private organizational scholarships, potentially parental employers, civic organizations, etc. Okay. So within that merit-based world, which once again, a merit scholarship this is free money that is being awarded to the student on the basis of something other than, I come from a family of 5 with an income of $48,000 a year. I need a lot of help. Grant, free money based on financial circumstances. Scholarship, there can be scholarships that have a financial need basis as one of the selection criteria, but not exclusively. So the largest group, the largest subcategory in this group are admissions-based merit scholarships. Your application for admission is your application for scholarship. You're reviewed and you are admitted, and you're admitted with a scholarship of X. And I will say something that I would not necessarily say at every forum I do this, specifically for folks at DePaul Prep. We went to if I have some parents on here that this is number 3, number 4, heaven forbid, number 5, and you've been in the college matriculation game for 20 plus years, it used to be that the top 50% of your applicant pool that you're admitting would get admitted with the merit award if you are a school that does merit. Now at DePaul, every single student who gets admitted gets a scholarship. If you were just very barely admitted, you get a $7,500 Vincentian Award. If you are that 4.3 weighted GPA with or without test scores, you're getting between $23,500 and $25,000 from us. So if you're looking at a pool that is going to be almost exclusively private, whether it's Catholics, selective liberal arts colleges, what have you, basically every school the student is admitted to, they should be admitted with free money, which has no bearing on your financial circumstances. And as Katie mentioned earlier, there are frequently in the admissions process awarded scholarships that are supplemental scholarships, not just the evaluation of the student's admissions application. Leadership and service. At DePaul, we actually changed ours a couple of years ago. So most Catholic universities for sure, for entering freshmen, have leadership or service scholarships, where basically the selection criteria are going to be the student's resume. Have they done a lot of service in the community? Have they been involved in a lot of leadership activity at school? So we changed ours. Unfortunately, our leadership and service are sophomore, junior, senior scholarships. They're not open to freshmen, but I think most of our competitors still have them. Katie mentioned music scholarships earlier. At DePaul, we have conservatory programs for music and for theater. Their entire admissions process is audition based, so they receive talent scholarships. And obviously the other category of talent is at an NCAA Division I level institution, athletic scholarships. So you guys get it. Grant is free money based on the student's family's financial circumstances. Scholarship is based on an holistic evaluation of the student's strengths, and that is money that is being offered because this is an awesome student and the school wants them to come beyond the student's financial profile. So I'm going to kind of skip ahead a little bit. This is the general philosophy of the financial aid process, that there should be fairness and essentially logic applied to all circumstances. So if you all take nothing else away from this call tonight, understand two things. One, if you have a child who's putting you through an 18 college admissions application pool, of which he or she is admitted to 16, you are unequivocally going to have 16 different price points. Because how much money you are being offered from school A versus school B versus school C is completely individualized to the comparative resources between school A and school B and where the student falls within the applicant pool. All schools are not created equal. Student may be in the top 20% of the applicant pool at this school, but in the bottom 30 of admissible students at another school. And we're going to talk about how you can kind of troubleshoot and get a realistic sense of where your student will fall within the applicant pool at specific institutions. The second piece is you understand that when you are completing the FAFSA, which is the basic, and this is an appropriate time to unpack FAFSA versus profile. FAFSA is not optional. FAFSA is mandatory. Technically, the free application for federal student aid is just that. It is what makes a student eligible for governmental student loans, parent loans, that federal Pell Grant, and the state aid, the Illinois MAP grant. But because, as Katie pointed out, of the more than 4,000 private colleges and universities in the country, 104 of them meet full financial need. So the vast majority of us are using the FAFSA to award our own money. It is the uber wealthy, uber selective, Ivy and Ivy equivalents that are like, yeah, you need to do your FAFSA because of your Pell, or if it were Northwestern or University of Chicago, you need to do the FAFSA so that you're getting your Illinois MAP grant, your federal Pell Grant, may or may not need to use loans, but they are awarding that Northwestern or University of Chicago or Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, Yale money on the analysis of completing the CSS profile, which applies a higher level of financial analysis to the family. So there is no school where it is either. If it is a profile school, you are still doing the FAFSA. You need to do both. So I just wanted to make it clear. There are FAFSA only schools, and then it is FAFSA plus profile, not a swap out. Okay. So you went over earlier, the FAFSA opened 3 days ago. It opens on October 1st. And Katie was reporting that it's a little glitchy. That's because you have a bunch of people who, because of the way this was messaged when they first made the switch from January 1 to October 1, which has now been about 10 years, our entire community was very, very, very geared up to say, hey, the FAFSA opens in October, not January. You must do this in October or you could lose out on money. But as Katie said earlier, as long as you have this done by December 1st, you'll be fine. The important thing to do is to not try and do this, excuse me, all in one fell swoop. What I mean by that is you could absolutely go out tonight, create the FSA ID for the student. And if it's a two-parent household, one parent, you don't both need them, and complete the FAFSA right now. However, that would not be the move to make, because when you are creating this FSA ID, and the process is much akin to creating a site, establishing an account on an online banking site. There's going to be a user ID, a password, a bunch of security questions, etc. So if you were to go to the FAFSA on the day you create that ID, all you can do is sign the FAFSA. If you create the FSA ID for the parent when you have created this and it's essentially submitted to the government, in 24 to 72 hours, you will get an email back saying the Social Security Administration confirmed that you are who you say you are, and it is fully active. The reason you want to do that is because then when you go in to complete the FAFSA, you can populate the FAFSA using the IRS data retrieval tool. So what in the world is that? This is the ability for the parent, when completing the FAFSA and getting to the parent financial section, to press a button and get transported out of the FAFSA into the IRS's gateway, where you are asked. So when you're creating this FSA ID and password, this user ID and password, they are linked to your name, your Social Security number, and your date of birth. Social Security Administration confirms that you are that person. You go to the IRS gateway, it's going to show your name, the last four of your Social Security number, your date of birth, and your tax filing status. All you need to do is enter the address, your address, as it appeared on your 2021 tax return. So the heads up is, if there is someone who has moved between 2021 and now, you are not using your current address, you are using the address that was on the 21 tax returns. You're allowed in. 2 questions. Press here if you would like to populate the FAFSA with your tax data. Press here if you would not. You absolutely want to populate this with your tax data, because if there is anything that has changed your income situation between what's on your 21 taxes and what is going on in the fall of 2023, which is nearly 2 years later, when this student is starting college, we can do what has been referred to a couple of times on this call, a special circumstance appeal. But wait a second, our 2021 adjusted gross income was $175,000. We're a 2-parent household, but I lost my $110,000 job in February of 2021 and I'm not working. February of 2022, and I'm not working. So all schools have the ability to change the numbers to adjust for current circumstances. The big however is, we will not make any of these changes until we have verified that the numbers on the FAFSA match the numbers on the taxes. So if you were to not do this using the IRS data retrieval tool, and you have a 7-school pool that you're still considering in March, you would have to send signed copies of your 21 taxes to all 7 of those financial aid offices, so that I can put on my glasses and take your paper taxes and say adjusted gross income 118, that's up, they put 116,799 on the FAFSA, this has to be changed. So for the matter of efficiency and candidly credibility, because I told you that you will have 2 choices when you go to the IRS data retrieval. You have the choice to say, yes, transfer my stuff, or no, don't. If you choose no, don't, every school that gets the FAFSA is going to get a code indicating that you turned down sharing your tax information via IRS data retrieval, or worse, that you changed the numbers. And that is going to immediately put you in a situation in my community where we're looking at you cross-eyed and are going to ask for every financial document known to man. So you save yourself a lot of grief on the back end simply by completing the FAFSA and populating it automatically, so to speak, with your actual verified 2021 federal tax information. And if somebody's in a situation where they've done it, they're in an involved tax issue and you filed an extension and they're not done, well, you can certainly complete the FAFSA using estimates, right? So that you're benchmarked with a processing date and the information goes to the schools, but you would absolutely want to have your 2021 taxes finalized by February of 23, when these financial aid awards are going to come out. So I have it. And so, this is just doing the FAFSA is very easy. Once you get this, once you have the FSA IDs, then the student's asked to sign. Then the parent is asked to sign, entering the FSA ID and password. And when that is all done, there is an acknowledgement that is sent. You can see these are pandemic era screenshots, but the process still looks the same. Both the student and the parent will receive an email that says you have successfully submitted your FAFSA. Then the next business day, both of you will get an email saying, we have processed your FAFSA and sent the results to the schools that you named, which is technically accurate, but what it really means is that they have electronically sent the FAFSA results to the school's federal email box. Then it has to be downloaded into the computer system. So I was on a call earlier today. If somebody did their FAFSA yesterday and they wanted it sent to DePaul, we're not going to be able to confirm that we have it for another 3 weeks. It takes schools a while to get their computer systems up for the next processing year. Okay. So a lot of this was going over between 6 and 6:30, but for folks who missed that, okay, what are the data elements? What is one asking for in the FAFSA? Family size, number of children within the household that are in college. The big data elements are adjusted gross income, federal tax paid, income from work, and untaxed income. Most notably, so here are the 3 biggest FAFSA mistakes. Two about income, and then there will be 2 about assets. The 2 big income and tax paid elements people make the mistake of not doing are when you get to the question that asks, this is another reason why you want to use the IRS data retrieval, so you're not left to your own devices to answer these questions. People used to be a much bigger deal like 10, 15 years ago, but when you get to the question, what was your federal tax paid? People will interpret that to mean, did you owe or did you have a refund? So if they didn't owe, they put their federal tax paid as 0. This is a huge mistake. Because if you have a $120,000 income, you better believe you had about $17,000 in federal tax liability. So if you were withheld at $18,800 and you received an $1,800 refund, that did not mean your tax paid was 0. Your tax liability was 17, you just got a refund because you were conservative and you were withheld more than your liability. So the reason that is disastrous is from the total income figure, obviously they are subtracting out what you paid in taxes. So if you really paid $17,000 in taxes and you have 0, that's $17,000 not subtracted out, and your expected family contribution is going to be significantly higher. So again, we don't see that. That's one from the good old days. What we continue to see would be people not reporting what you have taken out of your salary pre-tax to go into your 401k, 403b, or IRA. Those are elective reductions, and you are supposed to report them because they get added back into the total income figure. So people frequently forget about that. And if the student is selected for verification, you're going to need to send in your W-2s potentially, and the school is going to catch that. And if you had your salary reduced by $5,800 to go into your retirement plan, we're going to put that $5,800 back in there. On the asset side, FAFSA is much more reasonable about assets than CSS profile is, not the assessment percentage, because Katie had a slide about the assets. So whatever your assessable assets are and the percentage at which they assess them. But FAFSA does not assess equity in primary residence, nor does FAFSA assess balance in retirement accounts. I would still have some hair on my head If I had $1 for every parent I ran into over 29 years who reported $600,000 in assets on the FAFSA, the student did not qualify for any need-based aid when they had a $78,000 income, and that $600,000 was $250,000 in home equity and $350,000 in a 403B. Okay, so the FAFSA is asking for cash savings. What do you have in your checking and your savings account? Business equity. If you own a business, that you own a building and you own some equipment and the valuation of your business is $1 million, but against that million, you still have a $700,000 business loan out, then you have $300,000 in business equity. Same thing with investments. They are asking for non-retirement, non-home equity linked investment. If you have a second home, yes, the equity in that home. If you have rental properties of which you are not upside down on, the equity in that. So that's the difference between FAFSA and profile. Profile, absolutely, if they have questions. When did you buy your home? How much did you buy it for? How much is it worth now? And what do you owe on it? So someone who bought their home in 1991 for $85,000, you never took equity out. It's now worth $400,000 and you only owe $21,000 remaining on that mortgage, then you have $379,000 is being reported on that CSS profile. So the fact that they assess it at 5 point whatever versus another 5 point whatever, it's about the totality of the universe of investment classes that are assessed in the need calculation. And finally, if you have that student that's interested in 12 schools, you can only put 10 on the FAFSA at a time. So if it's 12 right now, I assure you after Christmas, it will have dropped to 9. Or you may have picked up some late ones. So if you have sent the FAFSA record to 10 different schools and you want to add 2, you delete 2 of the 10 off. That does not retract the FAFSA record from those schools. It just means if there are any updates, they're not getting updated information until you add them back. But that is how you would make room for 2 more schools in completing the FAFSA. We also went over, had some very good slides for those of you who came in late, and you can see the recorded presentation about family size, family consistency in completing the FAFSA. So it's fairly straightforward. If biological parents are divorced and neither are remarried, the custodial parent, whomever the student resides with 50.1% of the time or more, is the person who is putting their income information down on the FAFSA. What is not going to fly, that some people do out of cluelessness and other people do trying to get away with it, is if biological parents are divorced and the custodial parent is remarried, trying to complete the FAFSA, only putting their information down, acting like the step parent is not involved. That will not fly. The rules are extraordinarily clear. And I talked about special circumstances. This is the one, there is no special circumstance around. It's not fair. I'm remarried. This is my first child, but my new husband put 3 grown children in. It doesn't matter. FAFSA eligibility is based on the household within which the student resides the majority of the time. And whomever is in that household is going on the FAFSA. Okay. And we are hoping to get to the point where it can be 1 FAFSA per family. We're not there yet. So if you have 2 children in school, you are going to complete 2 FAFSAs. It's the exact same parental information, but the FAFSAs are individualized to the students. And this is just seeing on the slide the assets that are not included in FAFSA asset. So we talked about CSS profile. It's very straightforward. And then Katie said she thought 300 and then went and looked, and there are 260 schools in the country, other than the public university systems that require it. Katie mentioned University of Michigan. If the student is going to apply to any of the University of California schools, UCLA, Berkeley, UCSD, they require CSS profile for out of state. The University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill requires CSS profile for out of state. And I believe the University of Virginia, Charlottesville. Otherwise, it's Ivies and Ivy equivalents. The actual Ivy League plus Stanford and USC out west, Northwestern and U of C here, Wash U in St. Louis, Vanderbilt, and then those that were in the, okay, I'm forgetting this, the buying group that are at the top of that. We're not Ivies, but we charge you nearly that much. That would be the Tulane, University of Miami, not of Ohio, of Florida, Syracuse, my alma mater, George Washington, and Georgetown, and American in DC. So this is very logical and consistent. If the school has a sticker price that is in the 70,000s or low 80s, and you need a 34 on the ACT or 1,500 SATs to get admitted to that school, they're a CSS profile school. Okay, as Katie showed, they do not do merit aid. They only do need-based aid. This is candidly how a DePaul or a Loyola gets a student who is Harvard admissible to come to us. So, and I've used the same example for a while. It was about 6 or 7 years ago. I had a family come in. They were from Minneapolis. Both dad and mom were Northwestern alums. Their son was looking at DePaul. They were very high income, and their son was like a 4.2 GPA with a 34 ACT. So they were looking at Northwestern versus DePaul. The student wanted to be a marketing major. We have a very good business program. At that time, right now, we're, for our freshmen this year, we're $58,600 for tuition plus room and board. Back then, we were probably right at 50, and our largest academic merit scholarship was 22,000. So this young man with those stats, we're offering him 22,000. We don't care about financial need. That is the cold-blooded bribe to get you to pick this school versus some other schools. So at that time, Northwestern was like about 62. So because they had an income of more than $300,000, they are not getting any free money at Northwestern or Duke or any of those schools because they only award need-based. So they were looking at a cost-benefit analysis of DePaul sticker 50 minus a merit award of 22, it's going to cost us $28,000 a year to send our kid to DePaul. It's going to cost us $62,000 a year to send our kid to Northwestern, and they send them to DePaul. But that is the best example one can give about regular privates like a DePaul, Loyola, Marquette, and why we offer merit scholarship money and why these schools, basically, they operate under a 20th century lens that is like, look, if you really have financial need, you're going to complete the CSS profile and jump through these hoops. And if you demonstrate it and you really need $69,000, Northwestern, Yale, U of C, Harvard will give you a $69,000 Northwestern University grant. Okay, but if you have a 5-point GPA on a 4-point scale and a 36 perfect ACT, but your parents make $500,000 a year, you will pay our full sticker price of tuition, room, and board. It's that straightforward. Okay, so you've completed all of the applications. So what's going to happen? This is our specific timeline. They had a really good timeline about some schools, Southern schools, moving up their early action deadlines very early. We're November 15th. We've been November 15th for 20 years. So any student whose admissions application is complete with us by November 15th will be notified, most of them before Christmas, but before February 1. And we will do our first round of financial aid awards the first week of February. So you get the financial aid notification. What's going to be in this? So we're going to go back again to the different sources of free money based on financial circumstances. So again, federal Pell Grant, everybody's heard of it, but only 32% of college students nationally qualify for federal Pell because it does not go very far up the income scale. For the purposes of my examples, I always use family of 4 with 1 child in college. So in order to be eligible for Pell, and Pell is also a sliding scale grant, meaning in English, if we have a family of 4 with an income of $31,000 a year, they're qualifying for the maximum federal Pell Grant of $6,895. If you have a family of 4 with 1 in college with an income of $59,200, they're going to get a $1,200 Pell Grant. So it is not one size fits all, and it is extremely income sensitive. I've just told you that within an income range of $25,000 to $30,000, you're going from $6,900 in free money from the federal government to 0. Next level up is the state grant. Our state grant, and that's actually a typo, that should say award estimate for 22-23 because the state grant was just increased. Last year's amount was $5,660 and this year it's $7,200. The state grant is not sliding scale, it's $7,200. Whether you just barely qualified or whether you have a 0 EFC and you're also getting $68.95 in federal Pell Grant. So in order to be eligible for MAP, family of 4, 1 in college, adjusted gross income below $75,000. So it doesn't matter whether your adjusted gross was $18,000 or $74,000, you're getting $7,200. So what I essentially just told you was, if your income is north of $75,000 to $80,000, you are not getting a cent in free money based on financial need from the federal or the state government. So this is why I led with unequivocally the largest share of money comes from the schools. So just give you a generic example. Let's say we have a student who's trying to choose between going to UIC, DePaul, and Loyola. UIC, so we'll do commuting, not living on campus. UIC tuition and fees, roughly $19,000. There's a little variance because they charge differentially whether you are a sciences or engineering major versus being a liberal arts major. But let's say $19,000. DePaul, $42,885. Loyola is usually $4,100 more expensive than we are, so that would make them $47,000. So how in the world can Loyola at $47,000, DePaul at $43,000 keep our doors open when UIC is charging $19,000? And the answer is, as I said earlier, because we do $100 million a year in free money from the school in the combination of academic merit awards. And I've already told you that every single entering freshman who is admitted gets at least $7,500. It's a range of $7,500 up to $23,000, $4,000, $5,000, depending on some gradations. And our average need-based grant award is $12,000. Okay, so you could be somebody who was admitted with an $18,000 merit award and still have a $12,000 need-based grant on top of that for a total of $30,000 in institutional funding. So this is how private institutions compete with in-state public. The other component of aid awards, and then I'll open it up for questions, is simply for first-time parents, it would be extraordinarily logical to assume that student loan eligibility is in some way variable based on the cost of the school. It is not at all. Student loan eligibility is governed by what grade level you are in college. So if you are a freshman in college, whether you're at Stanford or the University of Florida or anywhere in between, you may borrow $5,500 as a freshman on a non-credit basis as an entitlement simply by being admitted to a degree granting program and having completed a FAFSA. $5,500 year one, $6,500 year two, $7,500 year three. And just when you think you're getting the hang of it, it doesn't go up between junior and senior year. It repeats at $7,500. So the 4-year total for any undergraduate student who finishes in 4 years and uses his or her non-credit based student loan eligibility, they would finish with $27,000 in student loan debt, which translates into student loan payments of about $250 a month for 10 years with no prepayment penalty. So I take the time to do this because just like with the federal grant and just like with state grant in state, again, doesn't matter whether we're talking about ISU or Lake Forest College, or anywhere in between, that stuff is the same. This is the other item of a financial aid award will be the same, and that is the student loan eligibility. So that stuff is kind of outdated. This is just putting it very simply. How do you determine what you owe? It's everything. It is tuition and fees of the students commuting. The students living on campus, it's tuition, fees, room charge, meal plan, minus grants, scholarships, either internally or externally, factor in whether one is using the student loan or not, and whether the parent is going to use the federal government's Federal Parent Plus loan, which is the credit-based vehicle that allows a parent to take out the totality of the difference between the cost of the school and the student's financial aid or any portion thereof. And virtually all 4-year schools have a monthly payment plan. So you can also look internally, not looking at loans for the difference and not just paying as billed, liquidating a 529 plan, whatever. Most schools are we have a 10-month payment plan option and a 12-month payment plan option in DePaul. And this is just reiterating special circumstances. Again, when your freshmen are starting college, it is at the end of August or the beginning of September of 2023, and the income basis for their money is only as relevant as December 31 of 2021 or sooner. So whether that was a higher income year because one parent has gotten laid off and is still not working, or this may be the youngest child and one parent was working and is now retired, or your 2021 income was skewed upward because you had to take a hardship withdrawal out of your retirement account to keep from going into foreclosure. So we're talking about a 2-parent household where mom makes $60,000 a year, dad makes $50,000 a year. So in a normal year, their adjusted gross income is right around 110. But in 2021, they took a $35,000 hardship withdrawal out of dad's retirement because they were behind on their mortgage. That means on those 2021 taxes, instead of 110, it's going to be 145. We in my business have absolutely no problem taking that $35,000 out of income and treating that family as a $110,000 income family rather than a $145,000 family. That is a straightforward financial aid appeal. If you have done the FAFSA with the IRS data retrieval, all you would need to do is complete the form on the website of the schools involved and send, in that example, a copy of the 2021 1099, which is going to show that it was an emergency withdrawal. But that's just an example of a special circumstance that schools can and will make adjustments for, but not before we know that what is on your FAFSA matches your tax. So on that, this is pretty straightforward. We'll open it up for questions if anybody has them.